Sometimes the best things in life come in ways you never expect. Sometimes your heart knows what it wants before your brain figures it out. Back in the 1800s, in the Wild West, a rich lady named Elelena Hawthorne had all the money anyone could want, but she still felt empty inside. That changed when a tough mountain guy named Caleb Iron Hand McCoy saved her from a horse that was running wild. Caleb wasn't just any guy. Everyone in the area knew him for being super strong and liking to live all by himself. He stayed up in the mountains, far from people and their drama. But Elelena saw something special in him that others didn't. After they met by chance, she surprised him with words that rang out like a loud bell. "Get ready, mountain guy," she said. "We're gonna have kids together." She wasn't asking him. She was telling him they'd make a life in the wild. What happens when two people hurt by sadness and being alone start to believe they can love again? Before we keep going, tell us where you're listening from. And if you like this story, hit that subscribe button because tomorrow I've got something really cool for you. The morning sun made long shadows on the main street of Copper Ridge, turning the dusty road all golden and warm. Elelena Hawthorne stood by her bedroom window, her fingers drawing little shapes on the cold glass as she watched the town wake up below. At 32, she was so pretty that people couldn't help but stare. Her dark hair shone like smooth fabric. Her green eyes looked like they held secrets. And even her simple morning dress couldn't hide her beauty. But deep down, she felt restless, like something was missing, and it was getting worse every day. It had been 3 years since her husband. Edmund's funeral, 3 years since she became the richest widow around. Edmund was a kind man, much older than her, who made his money selling goods and investing in mines. Their marriage was nice and proper, set up by her dad when she was only 19. She played the role of the perfect wife, hosting fancy dinners, running the house, and wearing dresses shipped all the way from San Francisco. But being comfortable wasn't the same as being in love, and being proper didn't give her life meaning. Edmund left her so much money she could live like a queen forever, but as she stood in her big, fancy house with its fancy wallpaper and shiny chandeliers, Elelena felt trapped, like a bird in a pretty cage. The townsfolk treated her like she was super important, almost like royalty. Shopkeepers wanted her business, and single guys with money kept trying to win her over. Everyone wanted something from the rich widow, but no one saw the real woman behind the title. Her days were like a boring routine that felt like a jail. Breakfast on fancy plates at exactly 8, meetings with lawyers and business folks at 9, charity meetings at 10 no, and tea with the town's fancy ladies at 2 whoa. They always talked about the same stuff: who was dating who, the newest dresses from the East, and guesses about when Elelena would get married again and to who. She smiled and said the right things, but her mind was somewhere else, far from all the polite chatter. During one of these boring tea parties, Mrs. Patterson, the banker's wife, whispered about the mountain men who sometimes came to town for supplies. "They're rough and wild," she said over her tea. "That McCoy guy came through last week looking like he hadn't seen a town in ages. Scared me with those sharp blue eyes and that ugly scar on his hand." Elelena listened closely, curious about every word. Later, she asked her driver about these mountain guys and learned they lived alone up in the hills, trading animal skins and gold for things they couldn't make or grow. The idea of living so free, away from all the town's rules, excited her in a way she couldn't explain. 60 miles away, in a log cabin high on a rocky cliff above Crystal Valley, Caleb McCoy was starting his day. At 35, he was tall, over 6 feet, with strong shoulders from years of hard work and a body toughened by mountain life. His dark hair had a little silver at the sides even though he wasn't old, and his beard was neat even though he lived alone. His eyes were a pale blue like ice, warm when he wanted them to be, but usually tired like he'd seen too much. The scar on his left hand, which got him the name Iron Hand, came from a fight with a bear 3 winters ago. He won that fight, unlike the bear. The scar made his hand stronger, able to break wood with just his grip. It helped him survive in a place where strength was everything. Caleb's cabin showed how much he could do on his own. He built every part of it himself, cutting and shaping the logs with care, like a master builder. Inside, it was simple but cozy, a stone fireplace to keep it warm, furniture he made to last forever, and shelves with books he'd traded for. He wasn't the wild man the townsfolk thought he was. He just liked the simple challenges of nature over the messy lies of people. His days followed the seasons and what he needed to survive. In winter, he kept the fire going, checked his food, and planned his work. There was always something to do: chopping wood, fixing tools, checking traps, or hunting. In spring and summer, he grew a small garden and picked wild herbs and berries. In fall, he went to Copper Ridge to trade skins for supplies, dealing with the townsfolk's stares and whispers, who saw him as a strange outsider. Caleb hadn't always lived alone. He used to wear a soldier's uniform, following orders and fighting with others for causes that seemed important back then but felt empty now. The Civil War took more than just 4 years of his life. It took his belief in people's goodness. He saw too much, did things he tried to forget, and when the war ended, he couldn't go back to normal life. The mountains were like a safe place for him. Here, the rules were clear: work hard, stay sharp, respect the land, and it would take care of you. No politicians sending men to die, no rich folks getting richer off others' pain, no gossipy ladies talking about private stuff, just the wind in the pines, hawks calling above, and the pride of a job done well. The trading post at Miller's Creek was a middle ground where mountain men and townsfolk sometimes met. Old Pete Miller ran the place, a weathered log building by 2 streams where the trail to Copper Ridge split toward the mountains. Pete kept good supplies, didn't ask too many questions, and treated everyone fair. It was Pete who first told Caleb about the widow Hawthorne, not thinking of romance. "That lady's got more money than sense," Pete grumbled while weighing coffee beans. "Asking all sorts of questions about you mountain guys, what you eat, how you live, probably writing a book for fancy Eastern ladies to giggle over." Caleb didn't care much about rich widows and their questions. He had bigger worries, like getting his cabin ready for winter snows. But fate had other ideas for bringing these two together. Elena's restlessness pushed her to take longer rides into the countryside, looking for something she couldn't name. And Caleb, even though he loved being alone, started thinking more about the trading post talks, about a world beyond his mountains that both pulled him in and pushed him away. Neither knew their lives were about to crash together in a way that would change everything they thought about love, bravery, and what makes life worth living. The mountains that kept Caleb safe were about to test Elena's change, and the woman who had everything would soon find what she'd been missing. The stage was set in the huge, wild American frontier, where surviving needed strength, character was built through tough times, and love, when it came, burned bright like a fire in winter. On a clear October morning, with a bright blue sky that made Elena's heart ache for something more than her orderly life, she sent her driver away and took her horse, Duchess, for a ride alone. Duchess was a lively chestnut horse with fancy bloodlines, a wedding gift from Edmund that Elena loved, not for its cost, but for the freedom it gave her. She wore a practical green wool outfit that still showed off her figure, with her hair pinned under a small hat, though some strands were already breaking free. She carried a little bag with sketching supplies, a new hobby she'd picked up to escape her boring social duties. The trail she chose went northwest from town, along an old miner's path through aspen and pine trees toward the foothills. She'd ridden this way before, but never so far from town. Something was pulling her forward, a restless feeling that needed space from everything safe and familiar. Duchess moved carefully along the rocky path, her breath puffing in the cool air. Elena let her thoughts wander as they climbed, thinking about a talk with her lawyer, Mr. Henderson, the week before. He'd gone on about investments to grow her huge fortune, but all she could think was how pointless money felt compared to the alive, colorful world of nature around her. Then, out of nowhere, a mountain lion jumped from the bushes with a scream that froze Elena's blood. Duchess panicked, rearing up, her hooves swinging wildly as the lion's cry bounced off the canyon walls. Elena was a good rider, but Duchess was terrified and bolted down the trail at full speed. Elena held on tight, fighting to stay in the saddle as the world blurred with wind, hoofbeats, and the fear she might die. Tree branches scratched her face, and rocks flew under Duchess's wild run. She could feel herself slipping with every jolt, her hair streaming loose behind her. That's when she saw him. Caleb McCoy stepped onto the trail ahead, calm as if he'd faced scarier things than a runaway horse. He didn't yell or wave. That would have made Duchess crazier. Instead, he stood firm, his icy blue eyes locked, on the charging horse, with steady calm. At the last second, as Duchess was about to crash into him, Caleb moved smoothly, stepping to the side and grabbing the bridle with his scarred hand. Elena watched, amazed, as he slowed the panicked horse with his quiet strength. "Easy, girl," Caleb said softly, his voice calm and soothing. "Whatever scared you is gone now." Duchess shook, still scared, but she stopped. Caleb's presence was like a bubble of safety in the middle of chaos. Elena stared at him, this famous mountain man she'd heard whispers about in town, and felt something click inside her heart. He wasn't what she expected. He was better, like a dream she didn't know she had. His dark hair had silver streaks, his beard was neat, and his pale blue eyes held a wisdom no fancy town talk could match. The scar on his hand stood out where he held the bridle, a mark of battles he'd won. "You okay, ma'am?" he asked, his voice carrying a slight twang but sounding smart, not like the wild man the gossips called him. Elena realized she was staring and felt her cheeks get warm. "I'm fine, I think. Thank you. If you hadn't—" "Mountain lion," Caleb said, looking into the woods with eyes that knew what to look for. "Hungry one, from the sound. You're far from town to be riding alone." Something in his tone, maybe a hint he thought she was foolish, made Elena sit taller. She noticed her hat was gone, her hair loose, and her sleeve torn from branches. "I can ride wherever I want," she said, lifting her chin like she did when shutting down nosy town ladies or pushy suitors. "I can take care of myself." Caleb's face stayed blank, but she caught a tiny smile. "Yes, ma'am, I see that," he said, his tone teasing just a bit. That should have annoyed her, but instead, it sent a spark through her. When was the last time anyone challenged her, even a little? When did anyone look at her without wanting something or acting fake? "You're him," she said suddenly, the words popping out before she could stop them. "You're Caleb McCoy, Iron Hand." His grip on the bridle tightened, and for a second, his eyes looked guarded. "That's me, ma'am. And you're the Widow Hawthorne." It wasn't a question. Elena felt a flutter. Maybe nerves, maybe excitement. "You know me?" "Hard not to. News spreads fast in small towns." He let go of the bridle and stepped back, ready to leave. "Your horse is calm now. I'd head back to town before that lion comes back." But Elena wasn't ready for this to end. Something about this man, the way he appeared when she needed him most, felt like fate. The air around him buzzed with something real, something her fancy life never had. "Wait!" she said, jumping off Duchess, her legs shaky as she leaned against the horse. "I want to thank you properly. You saved my life." Caleb, already a few steps away, stopped. "No thanks needed, ma'am. Anyone would have done it." "No," Elena said firmly, stepping closer despite his stiff posture. "Not anyone. Not like that. You're amazing with animals, with danger. I've never seen anything like it." She was close now, seeing the lines around his eyes from years in the sun and wind, smelling pine and leather on him, feeling the quiet strength he held back, like a fire waiting to burn. Then, words came from deep inside her, certain as the sunrise. "Get ready, mountain man," she said, her green eyes locked on his blue ones. "We're having sons." The silence was so deep, even the wind seemed to stop. Caleb's face showed shock, then disbelief, maybe even a hint of panic. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "Ma'am, that fall might have messed with your head." "My head's never been clearer," Elena said, stepping closer, seeing her reflection in his eyes. "I've been living half asleep doing what everyone expects. But this," she waved at the forest, "the rescue, their connection. "This is real. This is what I've been searching for." Caleb stepped back, but she could see he wasn't unmoved. Something sparked between them like a storm coming. "You don't know what you're saying," he said, but his voice wasn't as sure. "I know exactly what I'm saying," Elena replied, calm, as if talking about the weather instead of their whole future. "I know you feel it too. I know you're tired of being alone in these mountains. And I know this moment you saving. Us meeting like this isn't just chance." With that, she climbed back onto Duchess with new confidence, her torn dress flapping like a flag of rebellion against her old life. "Think about it, Caleb McCoy," she said, grabbing the reins. "Think about what it means to build something real together, because I'm making this happen, with or without you." She nudged Duchess and rode off, leaving Caleb on the trail, her bold words echoing in his ears. That evening, Elena returned to her big house, her mind set and her heart racing like it hadn't in years. She waved off her housekeepers, worries about her torn dress and messy hair, saying she'd just tripped a little. No big deal. But as she looked in her bedroom mirror, brushing her hair and checking the scratches on her cheek from branches, she knew everything had changed. The woman in the mirror looked more alive, more determined. Her green eyes sparkled, and her skin glowed with something deeper than just fresh air. She'd found him, the man who could give her the real life she wanted, and she wasn't letting society's rules or his stubbornness stop her. That night, by lamplight, Elena sat at her desk, drawing a rough map of the trail where she met Caleb. She quietly asked her driver about mountain paths, looked at old maps in Edmund's study, and guessed where Caleb's land might be. The map was messy, with wobbly lines for ridges and valleys, question marks where she wasn't sure. But it wasn't just a map. It was her plan to break free from her old life. 3 days later, she rode out again, this time with a pack of supplies to show she meant business. She packed practical stuff: dried meat, hard bread, a small pot, and matches wrapped in waterproof cloth. She also added things she thought a mountain man might like: a good knife with a bone handle, sewing supplies, and a bottle of fancy whiskey from Edmund's old collection. The climb was harder than she expected. The trail was steep, winding through thick trees and rocky slopes that tested her riding skills and her will. Duchess, bred for fancy parades, struggled, and Elena had to walk her over tough spots. By noon, she was totally lost. Her map was useless against the real mountains, where every ridge and valley looked the same. Her confidence faded as the sun rose higher and her water ran low. Then she saw smoke, a thin gray line rising ahead to her left, barely visible against the cloudy sky. Relief flooded her as she guided Duchess toward it, pushing through golden aspen trees. Caleb's cabin appeared in a clearing above a narrow valley, built to catch morning sun but stay safe from winter winds. It was bigger than she expected, made of huge logs that showed skill and hard work. The roof had hand-cut shingles, and stone chimneys stood at each end. A porch with handmade chairs and a table made it feel like a real home, not just a survival shack. Caleb stepped out as she approached, his face hard to read. He'd been working. His sleeves were rolled up, his hands dirty. A famous axe, sharp and shiny from use, was stuck in a chopping block next to a neat pile of firewood. "Lost?" he asked, sounding more tired than surprised. Elena got off Duchess, trying to look confident despite her dusty clothes and messy hair. "Not lost. Looking for you." "Figured," Caleb said, his blue eyes scanning her, the pack on her saddle, her stubborn jaw. "Long way for a chat." "This isn't about chatting," Elena said, dropping her pack to the ground with a thud. "This is about proving I meant what I said on that trail. I'm not some silly town lady with big dreams about frontier life." She pointed to the cabin, the woodpile, all the signs of his hard work. "I know this life is tough. I know it. Won't be easy." Caleb pulled the axe from the block and set it aside, facing her fully. "You don't know what this takes." His blunt words stung, but Elena stood firm. "Then teach me." "Teaching's one thing. Living's another, Mrs. Hawthorne. Teaching's for visitors who go back to cozy beds and hot meals. Living's what happens when there's nowhere else to go." Elena opened her pack, pulling out supplies and setting them on the porch steps like gifts. I brought stuff. I can cook. I can sew. I can learn anything you think I need. Caleb watched her, maybe a bit amused. Can you skin a deer, preserve meat for winter, set a broken bone, or treat a fever when the doctor's 3 days away? No, Elena admitted, looking right at him. But I can learn. I'm not scared of hard work, and I'm not scared of you. Her words hung between them, full of meaning neither was ready to face. Caleb's face softened, and for a moment, she saw the man behind the legend, someone who'd been alone so long that the idea of someone staying both excited and scared him. Why? He asked. You've got everything in town. Money, comfort, people tripping over themselves to make you happy. Why give that up for this? Elena thought hard, knowing her answer mattered. Because none of that's real. It's all acting, playing a part someone else picked for me. Down there, I feel like I'm fading away, becoming less me every day. She stepped closer, seeing his jaw tighten like he was fighting himself. But here, with you, I feel alive. I feel like the person I'm supposed to be. Caleb was quiet, his eyes moving from her face to the valley and back. When he spoke, his voice was softer but careful. Life here's no fairy tale, Elena. It's hard work from dawn to dusk, being cold, hungry, scared, making choices that could mean life or death. It's being cut off from everything you know, with no promise it'll work out. I know, Elena said quietly. I also know the other option is living half a life, going through the motions while my heart dies a little every day. She reached for his scarred hand, surprised when he didn't pull away. His skin was rough and warm, marked by years of work, and she felt a spark pass between them. I'm not asking for promises, she said. I'm not even asking you to love me or want me here. Just give me a chance to prove this could work, that we could build something better together than alone. Caleb's fingers tightened on hers for a moment before he stepped back, the distance feeling necessary but painful. You can stay tonight, he said, but tomorrow you go back to town. This isn't a game, Elena, and I won't be blamed if you try to make it one. Elena smiled, seeing his words as a tiny step forward. Thank you. That's all I need. One night to show I can handle this life. As the sun set behind the mountains, turning the sky orange and purple, Elena helped Caleb with evening chores. She was clumsy at first, new to mountain tasks, but she learned fast. By the time it got dark and they shared a simple meal on the porch, something had changed between them. Not love yet, but the chance for it. Floating in the clear mountain air, like the promise of morning. Elena woke before dawn to Caleb, moving quietly in the cabin, his boots soft on the wood floor as he got ready for the day. She'd slept on a simple cot in the main room, wrapped in blankets that smelled of wood and pine, and despite the strange place, she slept better then. She had in ages. The mountains quiet, with only the wind and distant bird calls, felt like home. Coffee's ready, Caleb said, not looking at her as she sat up, trying to fix her hair. He was dressed and moving like he'd been awake for a while. Elena took the tin cup he offered, her fingers warming around it, the coffee's strong smell waking her up. It was dark and bitter, way stronger than town coffee. Sleep okay? Caleb asked, sitting across from her with his own cup. Better than ever, Elena said honestly. This place, the quiet, the clean air, it makes sense in a way town never did. Caleb looked at her over his cup, his blue eyes studying her closely. You say that after one cozy night? Winter's coming, Elena. Up here, winter tests everything you think you know about yourself. Then let me face that test, Elena said, leaning forward with a fire in her eyes that made Caleb blink. Let me prove I'm tougher than you think. Before he could answer, they heard branches snapping and a low growl outside the cabin. Caleb was up in a flash, moving with the smooth grace of someone used to danger. He grabbed his rifle from the wall, checking it quickly. Bear, he said quietly, waving for Elena to stay put. Probably after the food stash. Stay inside and be quiet. But Elena wasn't about to hide while Caleb faced danger alone. She followed him to the window, peeking out at the gray dawn. a huge black bear, 7 feet tall when it stood, up, was clawing at a wooden box hung between trees to keep food safe. Elena had seen bears before, but never this close or this big. It was awesome and scary, a reminder of the wild power in these mountains. "He's hungry," Caleb said, almost to himself, "trying to fatten up for winter. Can't blame him, but I can't let him take my food either." Elena watched as Caleb stepped onto the porch, rifle ready but not raised, moving carefully to avoid provoking the bear. The bear turned toward him, its dark eyes locking on the man, challenging. "It's meal." "Easy, big guy," Caleb said calmly, like he'd talked to Duchess during the lion attack. "Plenty of fish in the creek down there. No need to mess with my stuff." The bear huffed and stepped closer, testing Caleb. Elena held her breath, amazed by his bravery, but terrified of what might happen if the bear attacked. She'd heard stories of bears tearing men apart, seen scars on trappers who barely survived. Then, without thinking too hard, Elena made a bold choice. She slipped out the back door, circled quietly toward the food stash, and grabbed a fallen branch. She threw it hard at a pile of rocks far from Caleb and the bear. The loud crash made the bear turn, startled. In that moment, Caleb fired his rifle into the air. The sharp sound sent the bear running into the woods, crashing through bushes with surprising speed. The clearing went quiet except for the echo of the shot. "Dang it, Elena!" Caleb snapped, turning to see her by the woodpile, holding another branch like a weapon. "I told you to stay inside. You needed help," Elena said simply, dropping the branch and walking toward him. "I couldn't just hide while you faced that alone." "You could have died. Bears are faster than you think." "But it didn't charge," Elena cut in, stopping close enough to see the fear and anger in his face. "Your shot was perfect, and we're both fine. We handled it together." Caleb stared at her, clearly torn between being mad and being impressed. "You don't get how lucky we were," he said, his voice softer now. "I know exactly how lucky we were," Elena replied. "Lucky to have each other. Lucky you knew what to do, and lucky I was there to help." She stepped closer, smelling gunpowder on his clothes. "This is what I mean, Caleb. I want to be your partner, not someone you have to carry. I want to face stuff like this with you, not alone." For a second, something changed in Caleb's face, like the walls he'd built were starting to crack. His hand reached out, almost without thinking, brushing her cheek where a scratch from yesterday's ride left a mark. "You're not like other women," he said quietly, his voice rough with something deep. "No," she agreed, pressing his hand against her face. "I'm the woman you need, even if you're too stubborn to say it yet." Caleb's thumb traced her cheek, and for a moment, Elena thought he might kiss her. The air felt electric, full of unsaid words and promises. But then he stepped back, his voice steady again. "Help me check the food stash. Make sure it's okay." Elena hid her disappointment and joined him, noticing how he moved with ease, how his hands were gentle even when checking for damage, and how he stood between her and where the bear ran, still protecting her even as he fought there. Growing connection. When they confirmed the stash was safe, Caleb went inside and came back with a soft wool blanket that smelled of cedar. "Nights get cold up here," he said, handing it to her. "Even in fall, you'll need this if you keep coming back." Elena took the blanket with a big smile, knowing it wasn't a love note, but a sign he wasn't totally against her visits. "Thank you," she said softly, holding the blanket like a treasure. "I'll take care of it." "Make sure you do," Caleb said, but there was a warmth in his voice now, a warmth that wasn't there before they faced the bear together. As Elena got ready to ride back to town, she carried more than a blanket. She carried the memory of standing with Caleb against a bear, the knowledge she was braver than she thought, and the growing certainty that this stubborn man was exactly what her heart wanted. The seed of something real had been planted, fed by shared danger and respect for each other's strength. Now they'd see if it could grow into something strong enough to survive the mountains and their hearts. Elena's trips to the mountains became as regular as the seasons. Each visit pulled her deeper into Caleb's world and further from her old, predictable life. October turned to November, bringing the first big snows that tested her determination and Caleb's willingness to let her into his lonely life. She was changing, not just in how she looked, but deeper. Her soft hands grew calluses from chopping wood and carrying water. Her face glowed from mountain sun and clean air, and her body got stronger from the hard work. But the biggest change was in her eyes. They shone with confidence and purpose no money could buy. Caleb started working on something at night after chores, when they sat by the fire eating simple meals and talking deep thoughts. Elena saw wood shavings on the floor and heard soft carving sounds from his workshop next to the cabin. When she asked, he brushed it off, saying it was just something to keep his hands busy during long winter nights. But she knew it was more. She saw how carefully he measured, how he picked only the best wood, how he worked with a tenderness that meant it was special. Caleb was carving a cradle, though he didn't plan to at first. His hands started shaping the wood while his mind wrestled with Elena's bold words about their future. Every curve he carved made her words feel more real. Every joint he fitted brought him closer to accepting what his heart knew from. That first day on the trail, Elena was going to change his life forever. The cradle was beautiful, made from mountain maple, with a grain like flowing water, its rockers perfectly balanced, its sides high enough for a wiggly baby, sanded smooth as silk. It showed who Caleb really was, patient, skilled, and hopeful, despite himself. Meanwhile, Elena was balancing her two worlds. The people in Copper Ridge noticed she was gone a lot, skipping social events and ignoring the single guys chasing her. Mrs. Patterson and her gossip friends talked endlessly about the widow's weird behavior, but none guessed the truth. "Ellen, dear, you missed another ladies' meeting," Mrs. Patterson said outside the store, her voice fake sweet. "Dr. Hutchinson was asking about you. Such a nice man, so successful. I hope you're not letting sadness cloud your future." Elena smiled politely, but burned inside with annoyance at these pointless social games. "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson, I'm fine. I've just been riding in the country, enjoying the fall before winter comes." "Riding alone?" Mrs. Patterson's eyebrows shot up. "The frontier's no place for a lady by herself, with those rough mountain men around." If only she knew, Elena thought, keeping her face blank. If only she knew one of those mountain men was teaching her to read the sky for weather, track animals, build fires that last all night, and find her way through forests with just the sun and stars. During one visit, as they sat on Caleb's porch watching the first big snow cover the valley in white, Elena spoke up. "I want to stay," she said, her breath puffing in the cold. His eyes showed a battle, wanting her to stay, but scared of what it meant. "Elena, I know what you're gonna say," she cut in, turning to face him. "It's dangerous. It's hard. It's a big change. But I've thought about this for weeks, and I'm sure." She pulled out a folded paper from her coat, legal documents she'd prepared in secret. "I've arranged to sell my house and most of my stuff. I'll keep enough money for supplies and emergencies, but the rest," she pointed toward the town below, "is just stuff I don't need anymore." Caleb set his cup down carefully, like he was afraid to break the moment. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious," Elena said, her voice steady. "I've spent 2 months learning what it means to really live. Caleb, every day I go back to that empty house, every boring tea party, every pointless talk. It feels like I'm dying a little. I want to wake up to this view every day, work with you to build something that matters, have your kids, and raise them to be strong and free." Caleb was quiet so long, Elena worried she'd pushed too hard. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "You don't get what you'd be giving up. Comfort, security, respect. Whose respect?" Elena turned to him, her eyes fierce. "Mrs. Patterson's? Dr. Hutchinson's? People who see me as Edmund's widow with his money? That's not respect, Caleb. That's greed, dressed up nice." She stepped closer, seeing his inner struggle. "The only respect I want is yours. The only security I care about is what we build together. And comfort? I've never been more comfortable than right here." Caleb stood suddenly, pacing to the porch's edge like he needed space to think. Winter here's not like those nice fall days you've seen. It's months of snow making every log count, just us when things go wrong. You ready for that kind of alone? I'm ready for anything if we're together, Elena said, softer, but just as firm, following him. I'm not some delicate flower who'll break at the first trouble. You've seen me handle danger, learn skills I never thought I'd need. I'm stronger than we both thought. And if there's an emergency, we'll handle it like people always have, together, with guts and love. She touched his arm, feeling his tension. Life's got no guarantees, Caleb. Anywhere, at least here, we'd live it our way. Caleb looked at her, and Elena saw his walls start to fall. His shoulders relaxed, his breath sighed out. Years of loneliness. You really mean it, he said, a hint of wonder in his voice. You'd give up everything for this? For me? Not give up, Elena said gently. Trade up. Trade a life that was killing me for one that makes me alive. Trade fake friends for a real partner. Trade acting for being me. She stepped so close their warmth mixed in the cold air. I love you, Caleb McCoy. I love your strength, your kindness, your skills, your honesty. I love how you see the world and how you make me see myself. And I know you love me too, even if you're scared to say it. Her words were like a bridge over a scary river, asking for his truth. For a moment, she feared she'd gone too far. But then Caleb's hands cupped her face, his scarred fingers gentle on her cold cheeks. God help me, I do love you, he whispered. I've been fighting it since that first day, telling myself it wouldn't work, that I'd hurt you. But you're right. You're stronger than I thought, stronger than anyone. Tears of relief and joy froze on Elena's cheeks, but she didn't care. This moment was worth any cold ahead. Then let me stay, she said simply. Let me prove we can build something beautiful together. Caleb's answer was a kiss that tasted of coffee and hope, of giving in and dreaming big. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard in the thin air, Elena knew her future was set, not by duty or what others wanted, but by love and choice. To seal it, Caleb took her hand and led her to his workshop, where moonlight showed the half-finished cradle. Elena gasped, seeing not just its beauty but what it meant. You've been planning for this, she said, touching the smooth wood, hoping for it, even while fighting it. Caleb nodded, his hand over hers on the cradle. Hearts know things minds take longer to get. Mine knew from the start you'd change everything. I was just too stubborn to listen. Outside, snow kept falling, making everything fresh and new. Inside, two people who found each other against all odds started planning a future built on love, grit, and the belief they could face any challenge together. Elena didn't waste time making her choice real. The next week shook Copper Ridge's fancy folks to their core. Ada Hawthorne, the richest widow, was selling everything and running off to the mountains like a crazy person. Her house was a mess of activity as she sorted through her old life. Furniture, fancy dishes, and dresses worth a fortune now seemed silly to her. She kept only what worked for her new life: sturdy clothes, simple cooking tools, meaningful books, and a few special keepsakes. She left behind her wedding ring from Edmund. On a gray December morning, Elena slid the gold band off her finger, where it had sat for 13 years. It came off easily, like it knew its time was done. She held it, thinking of the young woman, who took it out of duty, not love, then put it in a box for Edmund's nephew, along with other family treasures. The ring stood for obligation, for a life others planned. What she chose now was freedom, real love, a future with a man who saw the real her. The legal stuff was trickier than she thought. Her lawyer, Mr. Henderson, called her plan financial suicide and refused to help at first. It took 3 heated meetings and a threat to hire someone else before he agreed. Mrs. Hawthorne, he begged, think again. Frontier life breaks tougher people than you. What happens when this mountain man leaves you for someone younger? What happens when the money's gone? Elena looked at him, calm as ever. Mr. Henderson, I've had every comfort for 13 years and been miserable. I'm trading fake, security for real happiness, and that's the best deal I could make. The town gossip was nasty. Mrs. Patterson told everyone at the store about Elena's mental breakdown. Dr. Hutchinson, who'd been chasing her, said he was heartbroken by her hysteria. Even the minister visited, worried about her soul. Elena stayed quiet about her plans, letting them talk. Their opinions didn't matter anymore. Only Caleb's did, and he showed he was in by working with her to plan their future. Winter hit the mountains hard, showing its true power. The snows that seemed pretty during her visits now tested her. Caleb's cabin was ready, thick walls, a strong roof, and enough food and wood to last until spring. But Elena learned preparation wasn't the same as living through it. The isolation was huge. Days passed with only their voices, like the world outside their clearing didn't exist. For someone used to constant social chatter, even if she hated it, the quiet was overwhelming at first. But slowly, Elena found peace in the silence. Without the pressure to act perfect, she relaxed into a new version of herself. Her laughter came easier, her thoughts flowed freer, and her talks with Caleb got deep in a way town life never allowed. They talked about everything by firelight, snow piling outside, their childhoods, dreams, fears, and hopes. Caleb opened up about his war days, his struggle to find peace after, and how the mountains healed him. Elena shared the emptiness of her marriage to Edmund, how being a society widow suffocated her, and her amazement at finding strength she didn't know she had. These talks, with snow against the windows, built a bond stronger than any wedding could. One night, Elena brought up what was on her mind, since they said they loved each other. "I want to be your wife," she said, looking up from sewing. "Not just your partner or friend, but your wife, for real. I want our kids to have your name and know their parents chose love over what's expected." Caleb paused, carving a small wooden toy. "Marriage means different things to different folks," he said carefully. "The church, the legal stuff, the town's approval, none of that works up here the usual way." "I don't need usual," Elena said, putting her sewing down to focus on him. "I need real. I need something that ties us together, no matter what anyone else thinks." Caleb looked at her, seeing the same fire that brought her to his mountain. "There are old ways," he said slowly, "from before churches and courts got involved, hand-fasting ceremonies that tie two people together as much as any paper." Elena's heart raced with excitement. "Tell me." "It's simple but deep," Caleb said, warming up. "Two people promise themselves to each other in front of whatever witnesses they pick. God, nature, the land's spirits. They tie their hands together, share bread and wine, say vows from their hearts. It's as real as any church wedding." "When?" Elena asked, leaning forward eagerly. Caleb smiled, his face glowing with love. "When the moon's full again, if you're sure. The next full moon's Christmas Eve. Feels right for a new start." Elena's answer was a kiss full of passion and promise. When they pulled apart, both breathing fast, she saw her joy mirrored in his eyes. "Christmas Eve it is," she whispered against his lips. "Mrs. Elena McCoy sounds pretty good, don't you think?" The weeks before were filled with quiet planning for their mountain wedding. Elena made a simple blue wool dress that matched her eyes and hair. Caleb crafted silver rings from ore he mined, simple but meaningful, with their initials and a tiny pine tree inside. They planned their ceremony for sunset on Christmas Eve, when the full moon would rise over the snowy peaks like a blessing. No guests but the mountain, no music but the wind in the pines, no flowers but evergreen sprigs from the forest. As the day got closer, Elena felt a peace unlike anything before. This choice was hers, made from love, not duty. The night before, as they sat by the fire, Elena took off the last piece of her old life. She pulled out a velvet pouch with her old wedding ring, the one that tied her to Edmund, and a life that didn't fit. Without hesitation, she walked to the cabin door and tossed it into the snow, where it vanished. It was the final goodbye, too, her past, finishing the change that started with 5 bold words on a trail. Tomorrow, she'd become Caleb's wife in the truest way. Not through papers or society, but through choice and love stronger than any rules. Christmas Eve was clear and freezing. The air so crisp sounds carried forever, and breath hung like clouds. Elena woke early, buzzing with nervous excitement. Today she'd marry Caleb in their own special ceremony, pledging herself to a man and life she'd dreamed of but never dared hope for. She planned to gather evergreen boughs for their ceremony space, but hoofbeats in the snow broke her plans. From the window, her heart sank as she saw 3 men from Copper Ridge, Sheriff Morrison, Dr. Hutchinson, and a lawyer, riding up, their faces serious. "Caleb," she called softly, knowing he'd sensed trouble. In the mountains, surprise visitors usually meant bad news. Caleb came from the workshop, his face calm but his eyes sharp. He sized up the riders with the quick judgment of someone who survived by reading danger. "Stay inside," he told Elena, grabbing his rifle. "I'll handle this." But Elena wasn't about to let others decide her life. She followed him to the porch, chin high with the stubbornness that got her through every challenge. Sheriff Morrison got off his horse first, his breath steaming. "Mrs. Hawthorne," he said formally, tipping his hat, "I need you to come back to town with us." "Why?" Elena asked calmly, though her heart raced with anger. Dr. Hutchinson rode forward, his face red with cold, and what looked like smug anger. "Elena, this craziness has to stop. You're not thinking straight, and as a doctor, I have to make sure you get help." "My mind's clearer than ever," Elena snapped, her voice sharp. The lawyer pulled out a paper. "This is a petition signed by lots of folks saying you're acting strange and need a hearing to see if you're fit to make decisions. You've left your home, sold your stuff, and moved in with a loner in a shack." Elena felt cold. Fear as she realized they could take everything she'd built with Caleb if a judge said she was unfit. "You have no right," she started, but Sheriff Morrison cut her off with a raised hand. "Mrs. Hawthorne, I have to protect you. Come quietly, or I'll arrest you for your own good. Either way, you're coming back." Then Caleb stepped forward, his stillness like a storm waiting to break. Elena saw danger in his posture. His voice was calm but hard. "Sheriff, you're on my land, threatening my woman. Think again." Dr. Hutchinson's face got darker. "Your woman? This guy's clearly tricked Elena, keeping her away from friends and family, making her give up everything normal. It's manipulation." Elena started to argue, but Caleb's next words stopped her. "Is that what you think, doctor?" His voice was colder, scarier than she'd ever heard. "That I'm some dumb mountain guy who tricked a rich lady for her money?" He stepped down the porch, his hand on a revolver she didn't know he had. "Let me tell you about manipulation, since you're so worried." His blue eyes locked on Dr. Hutchinson, who squirmed. "I spent 4 years in the Army Corps of Engineers, rose to lieutenant colonel before the war ended, fought at Antietam, Fredericksburg, Gettysburg, led men, made choices that decided if hundreds lived or died." Elena's world spun. Lieutenant colonel? This wasn't the simple mountain man she thought she knew. "The Army taught me plenty," Caleb went on, his voice quiet but deadly. "How to build bridges, tear them down, read land, plan battles, kill when I had to. And how to spot when men with badges think they can bully someone they assume is weak." Sheriff Morrison paled. "Now, McCoy." "No, Sheriff, you listen," Caleb cut in, his military authority clear. "The woman on this porch chose to be here. She wasn't tricked or forced. She left a life that was killing her for one where she can be herself." He stepped closer, and all 3 men reached for their guns. "You want to take her back against her will? Call her unfit for choosing love over money? Be ready for what happens next. Because I didn't survive 4 years of war to let small-minded officials ruin the best thing in my life." The air was thick with tension, and Elena knew men could die over her right to choose. Caleb's hidden past shocked her, but not as much as knowing he'd fight to protect their life together. "Caleb, stop," she said, her voice cutting through the quiet like a knife. She stepped beside him, her hand on his revolver. "You've seen enough violence. Don't add more for me." She faced the men, her eyes fierce. "Gentlemen, thank you for your concern, even if it's wrong. I'm a grown woman, fully in my right mind, and I've made my choice. If you want to fight me in court, go ahead. But I won't be dragged anywhere, and I won't let you threaten the man I love." Dr. Hutchinson's face twisted with anger. Elena, you don't get what you're doing. This man's been lying, pretending to be something he's not. Have you? Elena turned to Caleb, her eyes demanding truth. Caleb met her gaze, his hand still on his gun but his voice soft. I never said I was uneducated or simple, Elena. I said I chose to live in the mountains, away from society's mess. I haven't told you why yet, but that doesn't change who I am now or how I feel about you. She studied him, seeing old pain and fear she might leave now that his secrets were out. Instead, she stepped closer, her hand moving to his scarred cheek. Then we'll talk about those reasons later, she said softly. After we're married, and after these men leave our land. The sheriff looked between them, seeing they wouldn't budge. The lawyer stared at his papers, realizing his case was weak. Dr. Hutchinson still wanted to fight. This is crazy, Elena. You're throwing your life away for a liar. The only lie here, doctor, is you thinking you have any say in my life, Elena said, her voice cold as ice. You wanted a rich widow to boost your status. I chose a man who sees me as a partner, not a prize. If you don't get that, you don't get love. Caleb holstered his gun, stepping back but ready for trouble. Sheriff, go back to town and file your papers. But you're not taking Elena anywhere she doesn't want to go. Try, and you'll find some mountains are too dangerous to climb. The three men looked at each other, weighing their options against the couple's clear resolve. After a long pause, Sheriff Morrison tipped his hat. This isn't done, Mrs. Hawthorne. The court will want to hear about your mental state and there'll be consequences. I'm ready for that, Elena said confidently. I look forward to telling a judge why I chose real love over fake respect. As the riders left through the snow, Elena and Caleb stood together, the silence heavy with questions and truths. The man she loved wasn't exactly who she thought, but neither was she. Maybe that was right. Two people remaking themselves, finding love where the past mattered less than the future. The sun set behind the peaks, painting the snow gold and pink. It was time for their wedding, to promise themselves to each other despite society's obstacles. But first, they needed to share truths, because a marriage built on less than honesty wouldn't survive. The showdown with the town men had opened something between them, a space for hidden truths to come out. As they stood in the twilight, watching the riders vanish, Elena felt the weight of secrets like falling snow. We need to talk, Caleb said quietly, his soldier's posture still sharp. Before we make promises that tie us forever, you need to know the whole truth about me and why I came to these mountains. Elena nodded, hearing the seriousness in his voice. His secrets could change everything or nothing, depending on her understanding. Then let's talk. We've got all night, and I'm not going anywhere. Inside the cabin, the fire and lamplight made a cozy space for tough talks. Caleb paced, restless, while Elena sat in one of his handmade chairs, waiting for his words. I told those men the truth about my Army days, he started, staring into the fire. Lieutenant Colonel Caleb McCoy, Army Corps of Engineers. I built bridges under gunfire, designed forts that saved thousands, planned explosions that changed battles. Elena listened, picturing a younger Caleb, clean-shaven, carrying the weight of leading men and making life-or-death choices. I was good at it, Caleb said, his voice empty with old pain. Too good, maybe. The Army kept promoting me, giving me more men to lead. By the war's end, I was deciding the fate of thousands, soldiers and civilians. He turned to her, his eyes haunted. Fredericksburg was where it went wrong. The leaders had a dumb plan that would have sent 12,000 men into enemy fire. I tried to fight it, suggest better ideas, but orders were orders. Elena's heart hurt as she saw his burden. What did you do? I followed orders, Caleb said, his fists tight. Built the bridges they wanted, cleared the paths they chose, and watched thousands of good men die because politicians thought they knew war better than soldiers. 12,000 lost in one day, Elena. Men who trusted their leaders to use their lives wisely. The silence was heavy with his grief and guilt. Elena started to understand why he hid in the mountains, turning away from people and their ambitions. After Fredericksburg, something broke in me, Caleb went on. I kept doing my job, building, destroying, following orders, but I couldn't stop seeing those dead men's faces. At Gettysburg, when they wanted another deadly attack, I nearly quit rather than help it happen. But you didn't quit, Elena said softly, understanding growing. No, because I learned how to twist bad orders without breaking them. I'd build bridges that could be destroyed fast if we had to retreat. I'd pick spots better for defense than attack. I'd protect my men while looking like I followed. The plan. Caleb paced, memories stirring him up. It mostly worked. We saved lives that would have been lost in pointless fights. But it meant living a lie, acting like I supported plans I knew were wrong while secretly fighting them. Elena saw it now, a man with a conscience, stuck in a tough spot, choosing between duty and saving his men. The war ended, but the guilt stayed, Caleb said, his voice rough. I spent 4 years watching good men die for bad reasons. Even saving some wasn't enough. When they offered me a permanent job to rebuild the country, all I wanted was to get away from people's greed and stupidity. He looked at Elena, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. So I came here, where the only fights are with nature, and the only losses are my own mistakes. I thought I could find peace alone, outrun the memories and guilt by living a life that didn't need anyone else. Elena stood and moved to him, understanding washing over her. But you couldn't outrun it, could you? The guilt, the need to protect people you care about? No, Caleb whispered. And when you came into my life, when I started caring about you, all those protective feelings came back. That's why I didn't want you to stay, Elena. Not because I didn't want you, but because I was scared I'd fail to keep you safe, like I failed those soldiers. She took his scarred hands, feeling the marks of his past. You didn't fail those soldiers, Caleb. You saved as many as you could in a bad system. And you haven't failed me, have you? Caleb's eyes searched hers, desperate. Today, when those men came, I was ready to kill to keep you here. That scares me. What if I can't control that side of me? What if the soldier I was is stronger than the man I want to be? Elena stepped closer, seeing his fear and doubt. The soldier you were was protecting people he cared about. The man you are now did the same today. That's not something to feel bad about. It's something to be proud of. She touched his face, her fingers gentle on his jaw. You think your past makes you less worthy of love, but you're wrong. It makes you the man I love, someone who knows sacrifice, who fights for what matters, who understands the cost of choices. Caleb leaned into her touch like a thirsty man finally given water. I wanted to tell you before, but I was scared you'd see me differently, think you loved a fake version of me. The only fake thing was thinking your past could change. How I feel, Elena said firmly. I love your strength, your honesty, your gentleness, despite all you've been through. Your army days don't take that away. They explain it. She pulled out papers from her dress pocket. Legal documents she'd carried since her last town trip. Speaking of truths, I have something to show you. Something that makes today's fight even bigger. Caleb frowned at the papers. What are these? The final papers for selling my property and setting up a trust fund so we never worry about money, Elena said, satisfied. But more importantly, my petition to the court to recognize our marriage under common law rules. Caleb's eyes widened as he read. You filed for a marriage that hasn't happened yet? I filed for a marriage that started when I said those words on the trail, Elena corrected. Tonight's ceremony is just the heart part of what we already know is true. She pointed to the papers. Under territorial law, living together and saying we're married makes it legal. I've been here regularly, said I'm your wife, and we've acted like a married couple. That's as good as any church wedding. Caleb stared, amazement growing. This means when the sheriff tries to say you're unfit, they'll find you're not Elena Hawthorne, a widow they can question. You're Elena McCoy, a married woman whose husband can protect her from meddling. A slow smile spread across Caleb's face, the first real one since the showdown. You brilliant, sneaky woman. You've outsmarted them all. I learned from the best, Elena said, nodding at the military medals she'd seen among his things. My husband's pretty good at planning battles. The word husband changed the air, turning uncertainty into joy. The legal moves mattered, but they were nothing compared to what they were about to do. "So tonight's ceremony," Caleb started, "is for us," Elelonena finished. "Not for laws or society, just us, to start our life as true partners." Caleb pulled her into his arms, holding her with fierce love. "I love you, Elelonena McCoy. Your courage, your stubbornness, your way of finding answers where I see problems. And I love you, Caleb McCoy," she said. "The soldier, the mountain man, the craftsman, the protector, every part of you that brought you to me." They held each other as the last light faded and the full moon rose. Outside, snow fell, but inside, two people prepared to promise their lives to a future of honesty, trust, and love. Their ceremony was simple but deep. They'd tie their hands with leather strips, exchange silver rings, and say vows from their hearts. The stars and wilderness would be their witnesses. As they got ready, Elelonena felt a deep rightness settle in. This was where she belonged, with the man she was meant for. The challenges ahead, legal fights, town gossip, frontier struggles, seemed small compared to their strength together. The full moon lit the clearing like a blessing, making the world magical and new. It was time to step into their future, to become what they already knew they were: partners, equals, stronger together than apart. Whatever came next, they'd face as husband and wife, bound by choice and love that could handle any storm. The moonlight turned the clearing into a glowing space of silver and shadow, every snowflake sparkling like tiny jewels, the quiet feeling holy, better than any church. Elelonena stood at the cabin's small mirror, finishing her look for the biggest moment of her life. Her blue wool dress fit perfectly, its color making her green eyes and dark hair pop, braided with evergreen sprigs. Caleb came from the workshop with something wrapped in leather, the silver rings he'd made from mountain ore. When he showed them, Elelonena gasped at their simple beauty, polished to glow in the lamplight, with their initials and a pine tree carved inside. "They're perfect," she whispered, holding her ring up. "Like you," Caleb said, his voice thick with feeling. He'd changed into his best clothes, a white shirt, dark pants, and a vest that showed off his broad shoulders. His hair was combed, beard trimmed, looking like the officer he used to be. They gathered what they needed: bread Caleb baked, filling the cabin with a warm smell, and a meal Elelonena made: venison stew, berry jam, and wine she'd saved. They wrapped it in a blanket and stepped into the moonlit clearing. They chose a circle of flat stones by the creek for their ceremony. Caleb had cleared the snow, showing dark granite, and now arranged pine boughs to mark the space. Elelonena set up a simple altar on a boulder. The quiet was deep, just wind in the pines, and the creek's soft murmur under ice. Elelonena's heart raced with excitement as she looked at the wild beauty: snowy peaks, endless forests, and the moon blessing them. "Ready?" Caleb asked, standing beside her in the stone circle. Elelonena looked at him, this man who saved her from a horse and a life of emptiness, who fought wars and found peace in the wild, who built a home where love could grow. "I've never been more ready." They started with their vows, simple words from their hearts. Caleb went first, his voice clear in the cold air. "Elelonena, when you rode into my life with your bold words and fearless heart, you brought light to a darkness I thought would never go away. You saw not just a broken soldier hiding in the mountains, but the man I could be with the right partner. I promised to love you, protect you, and work with you to build a life worthy of the courage it took to find each other." Tears froze on Elelonena's cheeks as she said her vows. "Caleb, you showed me what it means to really live, to choose love over safety, purpose over emptiness. You showed me I'm stronger and braver than I ever thought. I promise to love you, stand with you through any challenge, and build a family that honors the wilderness that brought us together." Caleb took out the leather strips, soft deer hide he'd prepared with pine oil and prayers. He tied their hands together, right to right, left to left, saying old words that made two people one. As our hands are tied now, so our lives are joined. As this leather connects us, our hearts are bound forever. What the mountains have joined, let no law or society break apart. They exchanged rings, each slipping one on the other's finger with care. Elelena's hand shook slightly as Caleb put the silver band on her, not from cold, but from the perfect rightness of it all. "With this ring, I marry you," Caleb said, his eyes holding hers, making the world disappear. "In the sight of God and nature, with the mountains and stars as our witnesses. With this ring, I marry you," Elelena said, sliding his ring over his scarred knuckles. "For as long as we live, and whatever comes after." They shared bread, breaking the loaf Caleb made and feeding each other, the simple act feeling sacred, a symbol of the life they'd build, honest work, shared food, love that needed care. Then the wine, passed in a tin cup that had been Caleb's alone, but now blessed their union. As Elelena drank, she thought of her journey, the empty years with Edmund, the restlessness that pushed her to find more, the wild ride that led to Caleb. Every step brought her here. When the ceremony ended, Caleb untied their hands, but the connection stayed. They were married now in every way, legally, spiritually, emotionally. Elelena McCoy, partner to a man who loved her for who she was. "My wife," Caleb said, like he was tasting the words. "My husband," Elelena replied, the title wrapping her in belonging. They stood in the stone circle as the moon peaked, two people who found what they'd been missing. The ceremony was done, but the celebration was just starting. Tomorrow would bring challenges, legal fights, town judgment, frontier struggles. But tonight was theirs. Hand in hand, they walked to the cabin, their home, ready to start their married life. The moon blessed them, and the mountains seemed to approve of a love that honored passion, practicality, and the deep bonds that make two people one. Spring came late to the mountains, but when it did, it brought more than melting snow and budding trees. Elelena stood in the cabin doorway, one hand on her growing belly, watching Caleb work in their bigger garden. Morning sickness was gone, replaced by energy that made her feel alive. 6 months since their wedding, their love had grown stronger, their partnership proven against every challenge. The legal fights they expected never happened. Elelena's smart planning made court challenges impossible, and Copper Ridge's gossips moved on. Dr. Hutchinson left town for easier targets, and Sheriff Morrison suddenly respected mountain laws. But the biggest change was the baby growing inside her, the first of the sons she'd predicted that autumn day. Due in late summer, Caleb prepared with the same care he'd once used in the army. The cradle was finished, glowing beside their bed, ready for its first baby. He'd added a nursery to the cabin with handmade furniture and sunny windows. He'd studied midwifery and baby care, ready to deliver their child if needed. "Radishes are looking good," Caleb called, smiling from his weeding. "We'll have fresh veggies by summer." Elelena laughed, amazed at how normal concerns replaced her old loneliness. "Good. This little guy's got strong ideas about what I should eat." She joined him in the garden, moving carefully but confidently. Pregnancy suited her. Her skin glowed, her hair was thick, and her body curved with motherhood. She'd adapted to frontier life with strength that surprised even Caleb. "Any word from Pete Miller about our supplies?" she asked, sitting on a stool Caleb made for her. "Should be here soon," Caleb said, helping her settle, "including those medical books and fabric for baby clothes." Elelena nodded, pleased. They'd planned carefully for the birth, ready for anything. The isolation that once felt romantic now needed serious thought, but they had no regrets about raising their child here. While working quietly together, Elelena felt the baby move, a flutter that made her gasp with joy. Caleb was beside her instantly, his face shifting from worry to wonder as she guided his hand to feel it. "Strong," he said, his voice thick, feeling the tiny kicks. "Already eager to explore like us," Elelena said, holding his hand. Bold and stubborn, unwilling to be held back. They sat in the garden, hands linked over their baby, surrounded by the wild beauty that brought them together. The moment felt holy, a sign of everything they'd chosen. As summer went on, Elenena's pregnancy went smoothly. She stayed, active, helping with the harvest, preserving food, and making baby clothes. Caleb was caring, but not overprotective, respecting her strength. Labor started on a clear August morning, the air hinting at fall. Elelena woke with deep pains signaling the baby's arrival. Caleb turned the cabin into a birthing room with army-like efficiency. The labor was long and hard like most first births, but Elelena faced it with her usual grit. Caleb supported her with steady hands and calm words, using all he'd learned. When their son arrived, red-faced and loud, his cry rang like a victory. Elelena laughed through her tiredness as Caleb laid the baby on her chest, marveling at his tiny fingers and dark hair, so like his father's. "Thomas," she said, softly naming him after Caleb's dad. Thomas Edmund McCoy. Caleb's eyes teared up, looking at their healthy, strong son, already showing the stubbornness that brought them together. "Perfect," he said. As Elelena nursed Thomas, she thought of her bold words on the trail. "We are having sons." The first part was true, and she knew more kids would come. Their family started in a wild way, but was built on the strongest base. Love that beat every obstacle, a partnership tested by hardship, and a shared dream of a free, real life. Outside, the mountains stood timeless, ready to teach their son about strength, toughness, and the beauty of living close to nature. Thomas would grow up knowing love could overcome anything. Courage beat conformity, and the best things in life weren't bought. They were built with grit, defended with strength, and cared for with love, just like his parents did from their first meeting on that dangerous trail. 5 years later, the clearing around Caleb's cabin looked more like a small farm than a loner's hideout. A second cabin was built for their growing family, joined to the first by a covered path for winter. Gardens bloomed where wilderness once stood, and children's laughter filled the quiet mountains. Elelena sat on the bigger porch, nursing their youngest son while watching 4-year-old Thomas and 2-year-old Samuel play with wooden toys Caleb carved. Her prediction came true in ways that still amazed her. 3 sons so far, maybe more to come. Each boy had Caleb's strong face and her stubborn spirit, thriving in the mountains that challenged and nurtured them. Caleb came from his workshop, where he'd been making furniture for a trading post order, his work now known as far as Denver. His face showed pride in his craft, his eyes the peace of a man who'd found his purpose. The haunted look from their early days was gone, replaced by calm confidence. "The Morrison order's done," he said, sitting beside Elelena and stroking baby David's head. "Should cover us through winter and more." Elelena smiled, thinking how far they'd come from when Caleb was totally alone, and her wealth felt like a curse. They'd found a balance, self-sufficient but tied to the world through trade and rare town visits. "Mrs. Patterson stopped by the trading post," Elelena said, amused. "Pete says she asked about the crazy widow who went wild and seemed bummed we're doing great instead of suffering." Caleb laughed, warm with shared understanding. Some folks need others to fail to feel okay about their own choices. "Mrs. Patterson can't get that we don't see our life as a sacrifice." Thomas looked up, serious for his age. "Papa, tell us again how Mama rode up the mountain to marry you." Elelena and Caleb smiled, used to retelling their story, now a family legend that grew with each telling but stayed true to their courage. "Well," Caleb started, his voice pulling the boys in, "your mama was the bravest lady in the territory, but also the most stubborn. She decided she'd marry me whether I wanted it or not, and a mountain wasn't going to stop her." "Tell about the bear," Samuel bounced, excited. Elelena laughed, remembering the bear they faced together, the boys' favorite part. "It was huge," she said, "bigger than our cabin and super grumpy. But your papa knew what to do, and I knew how to help because that's what partners do. They face danger together." Baby David gurgled, too young for the words but soothed by his parents' voices. Elelena looked at his peaceful face, amazed at how her life had changed. The restless woman staring out her window 5 years ago felt like someone else's story. "Are we going to live here forever?" Thomas asked, curious like a kid starting to understand choices. "As long as the mountains let us," Caleb said, hugging Elelanina. "This is our home, boys, where your mama and I built something real together." Elelanina nodded, looking at the snowy peaks, changing forests, and clear creek that gave them both beauty and necessities. This wilderness was their safe place, their test, their gift. In the distance, she saw the wooden cross marking their wedding spot, where they returned every Christmas Eve to renew their vows, a tradition honoring their love and the wild place that blessed it. As evening came and the boys were called for supper, Elelanina sketched in her journal a record of their mountain life. The rough map she drew to find Caleb had grown into detailed drawings of their kids, their growing home, and notes on mountain rhythms she now knew by heart. Tonight's sketch showed their family on the porch at sunset, 3 boys playing while the mountains stood guard. It was a simple picture, peaceful, but it held everything she'd dreamed of when she told a shocked mountain man, "We are having sons." Caleb had prepared for fatherhood, for partnership, for a life with someone who knew the best adventures. Were in choosing love over rules and purpose over emptiness. As stars appeared over their mountain home, Elelanina felt deep happiness from a life well lived and a love stronger every season. Their sons would grow up knowing anything was possible with courage, that love could move mountains, and that the best inheritance wasn't money, but the example of 2 people who dared to build something beautiful in the wild, honest land where dreams came true for those bold enough to chase them. The mountains gave them love, family, purpose, and the sure knowledge they chose right when they chose each other. Their story would go on with each season, each challenge, each blessing, built on a foundation as strong as the ancient pines that watched their love grow and would guard their children's children for years to come.